For those of you that have watched the channel for a while, I'm sure you saw back in the spring, in the offseason last year, I did a couple of tier lists. So I ranked Big 12 football stadium environments, and I ranked Big 12 football coaches based on a tier system. And backed by popular demand, I'm bringing it back, and I'm going to debut it here in a live format. So I will rank the coaches, as you will see here, from the S tier to the D tier. S tier to the D tier is what you are going to get. Very easy, simply. I will drag the coach wherever it is that they're going. You'll see, I will explain it all. So if you're wondering where your coach is going to be, now is the time to find out. It was really fun to go through this list and see, all right, how much have things changed since last year? So let's get started. Our Big 12 coaches tier lists. First on the board for me is Dave Aranda. Last year, he was on the C tier. He has an 8-win regular season, and he slides back up to the B tier. How about that? Dave Aranda, a mover already. It was tough last year for me to pick where to put him, and I put him in C. It was like the great year, 12 wins, but then outside of that, had really struggled. Things were going definitely in one direction, and it was not up. Now you look at it, and it's like, okay, there are like two different halves here to the story. He's 11-23 in one portion of his Baylor career. He's 20-7 in another, and if not for a crazy Hail Mary, would be 21-6 and would have been right in the thick of the Big 12 title race to try and get there for a second time. So I kind of just split the difference and said, not just winning the 8 games last year, but the fact that they were hot at the end of the year and that they haven't so much coming back, a great quarterback coming back. They figured out the most important thing in football. I'm feeling good enough to move Aranda back to the B tier for right now. So congratulations to Dave Aranda. Oh, Brent Brennan is next up, man. And I'm sorry. There's no, I want to save you the suspense. There's no other option for Brent Brennan right now but to put him in the D tier. This all, by the way, the S tier is the best, obviously. D tier is the worst. All relative to their peers in the Big 12. So I'm not necessarily saying D tier nationally, S tier nationally. It's how they compare to the rest of the league. Brent Brennan, man, it was just a disaster of a season. Squandered a top 10 pick at receiver, had a very good returning quarterback, didn't go well there. That was already after the narrative last year was like, well, it's kind of like an ink blot test on what you think of him. Went 34-48 at San Jose State. So you can say, well, that's a terrible record. Why would he be any good? But there had only been 3 bowls in 11 years before him, and he went to 3 in 4 years. So tough place to win, and he had a nice career there. Now you start to lean toward he was 34-48 side of this. 25 players in the portal this year, taking a big swing, had to. Lot to replace there. Lost, Manu, Maldonado, lots of really good players in addition to obviously Tetairoa McMillan. We'll see how things go, but I think only fair to drop him down. We come to a new coach here. Where did he go? He's next on my list here. Okay, you know what? We'll just go Matt Campbell. Because I'm not able to pull Rich Rod, who is what I was going to do there. Matt Campbell, A tier last year, S tier this year. Matt Campbell gets to move on up. It is well-deserved. He had a phenomenal year. I was looking through my notes from last year and what I said about him, and it was, hey, A tier, I think he's very good, but I wonder about that ceiling. Seems like very high floor. What about the ceiling? He smashed right through the ceiling this year with 11 wins. 11 wins, now 2 years removed from a 4-win season and a gambling scandal, and has them playing for the Big 12 championship, winning a school record 11 games. Obviously, he has displayed now a new ceiling and is a guy that belongs on the S tier. I literally did say last year in this exercise, if he takes the next step, he moves into the S tier, and he absolutely did that. Guy who's won 7+ games in 7 of his 9 seasons at Iowa State, has a Big 12 title and 2 Big 12 title appearances. Well deserved there. Well deserved. All right, now let's go Rich Rod. Next on my list, totally new. Neil Brown was a B tier last year. Neil Brown got fired. He's done. So where are we going with Rich Rod? I'm going B tier. I'm going B tier with Rich Rod. I think it's fair. Start him kind of in the middle because this is a very mixed message kind of resume. Great stuff at West Virginia the first time around. Obviously, he had 3 10-plus win seasons. Came painstakingly close to playing for a national championship. 6 seasons, he won 8-plus games there. West Virginia, in the last 6 years, only has 1 8-plus win season. So that shows you what he did relative to, a peer and Neil Brown, who has been there recently. Solid career at Arizona. 8 games over 500. Got him to a Fiesta Bowl. Won 10 games there. So Arizona fans certainly are familiar with Rich Rod. But, Michigan was bad. Rebuilt at Jacksonville State. Like, okay, how well will that translate from that level? You're certainly more inclined to believe that it will translate better because he's done it here at this level before. But it is a much different game, and he's relying on 31 portal kids this year, getting the program jump-started. For right now, I kind of split the difference with Rich Rod. Enough respect for me to keep him in the B tier. Now the biggest star of all from last year, Kenny Dillingham. Kenny Dillingham, I had him in the D tier last year. The D tier. This is wild, people. How far can I possibly move Kenny Dillingham up in just 1 year after winning 3 games? His first year at ASU. All the way to the S. All the way to the S, baby. Kenny Dillingham pulled the impossible. D tier to the S tier. And when you go from winning 3 games to damn near getting to the semifinals of the college football playoff, coming 1 play away from that, and perhaps a targeting penalty that was a bad call away from that, you get to the S tier. And it's about more than just last season, which obviously was phenomenal. 3 wins to 11 wins, an 8-win jump, nothing short of incredible. But, how he did it. Like, Cam Scadaboo was not some crazy 5-star recruit that took $1 million to get out of the portal. Like, Cam Scadaboo was a guy just hanging out at Sacramento State, and he turned him into a borderline Heisman finalist. Like, he should have gotten an invite to New York. He turned Sam Leavitt into a top 5 quarterback for next year. You're seeing him on all these lists out there that are listing the best quarterbacks for next season. Sam Leavitt, pretty consensus top 5. And that's after he was not afraid to move on from Jaden Rashada, which I would think as a young coach, there'd be a lot of pressure to keep the really highly recruited, high-profile guy, give him the job, try to make that work. Said, look, man, Sam Leavitt's better. I'm going to go roll with that. And if Jaden Rashada transfers, then fine. And if you follow Rashada's career now, about to go somewhere else again, that was obviously the right call. And then we've also got the fact here, Dillingham's 34. He seems like the perfect coach for the new portal era. Young, understands NIL, understands the portal. He's been all about hyping up his guys who enter the portal, which is a great look. Man, that's a fantastic look. That's the type of thing that you need to do these days. Even if some old school fans don't like it, you got to do that. So the only drawback to me on Dillingham so far is just short track record. It's 1 year, but I got to go all the way to the S for what he did this year. Got to go all the way to the S. Okay, who do we got next? We got Sonny Dykes. We've got Sonny Dykes. Where am I going with Sonny? I had him in the B tier last year, which was a tough one. I was waffling back and forth between B and C because I was so disenchanted with what had happened since the national championship game appearance. We're going to go B. We're going to keep Sonny Dykes in the B tier. No movement this year. Obviously, a guy who has won a playoff game, which nobody else in the league has done. Got to give him credit for that. That was a hell of a run in 2022 at TCU. And it was a really, really bad year. This year, fairly milquetoast, which for TCU, that's pretty rare. Like, TCU has been the program that swings to either 12 wins or 4 or 5. There's not been much in between. This was an in-between year from Sonny Dykes. 9-4 with a bowl win, 8-4 regular season. Solid enough for me to keep him in the B tier for right now. Sonny Dykes can be mobile. That's a guy that could definitely be mobile. With a good year or a bad year, I would not hesitate to move him up or down 1 tier at all. Here's a fascinating one, guys. Mike Gundy. What do you do with Mike Gundy now? He was in the S tier. What do you do with him after the worst season of his career with only 3 wins and getting shut out in the Big 12? We're going to drop him to the A tier. Now, understand this is much more about being like a snapshot in time than anything else, because obviously based on his career accomplishments, he would be an S tier Big 12 coach. But because we're right in the midst of this now, I've got to say, like, hey, is it slipping? Is this the end of the line and things are starting to slip for Gundy or not? I've got to ask that question. And because of that, I'm putting him in the A tier. He's an absolute legend, probably a college football Hall of Famer. But I wonder if we're witnessing the beginning of the end here or if he does have another comeback in him. 18 straight bowl games before last year, 18 straight winning seasons. He's got 8 double-digit win seasons, 2 12-win seasons. Again, can't knock the historical resume at all, but I've got to take some recency into account here and put him there for now. Joey McGuire, my guy. I like Joey McGuire a lot, and this was one of the toughest decisions that I had to make. Are you going B tier or A tier with Joey McGuire right now? We're still rocking the B tier. And a part of the reason that it's tough is because, man, I mean, he just pulled together the number 3 portal class in the country. He recruits like a madman. I know the Micah Hudson saga has been crazy, but he did land him. He was a 5-star recruit. Follows that up with a number 3 portal class this year. I know money's doing a lot of talking there for Texas Tech, but clearly you still got to be able to sell it too. And Joey can definitely do that. And he has been pretty rock solid in just inching the program closer on the field. They got up to an 8-win regular season this year, still looking to break through for that 9th or 10th win and seriously threaten for a Big 12 championship spot. Tech fans, I think, have felt like that was going to happen each of the last 2 years. It has not. So we still got to do that. Before I can move him into the A tier, I've still got to see that happen. Maybe not even necessarily making the Big 12 championship game, but like legit be right there to the very end. And I just haven't seen that yet. So I'm still in prove it mode with Joey McGuire, much as I love him, and I do love him. Chris Kleiman, somewhat disappointing year this year. What are you doing with Chris Kleiman after a 9-4 year, which was an 8-4 regular season, started 7-1, and really, really limped to the finish line? I'm going to keep him in the S tier, but if there's a second consecutive kind of like 8-win season, I can understand knocking Kleiman back to the A tier, especially if we look at like what's happening with other coaches in the league. Still think he's done an excellent job. He's been very consistent. The only time he has not won 8 games at K-State was the COVID year. A lot of wonky stuff happening there. And even if last season was slightly disappointing, he still, with a first-year starter at quarterback, kept things pretty well in line with what the expectations of the program have been. Hardcore fans, I understand. I see it in my Discord every day. They very much want him to take that next step again and win another Big 12 championship. Obviously, that would be the hope. But for now, he's got such a high floor and has, I thought, done a really good job in the portal this offseason. It's not going to be the highest-ranked portal class in the world that you will see, but I think he's done a very good job. And he also maintained a lot of his talent, kept those guys around. It's a developmental program. I expect them to be better next year. We'll see. Certainly potential downward mobility if it is another similar year. Scott Frost. This is one that I'm sure won't make UCF fans very happy. What do you do with Scott Frost? You put him in the C tier. Look, Scott Frost in 2017 was awesome. And I was all about celebrating UCF's national championship in 2017. Seriously, did it on my radio show. We had a whole thing about it. But, man, it's 2 years. We have 2 years of Scott Frost being a good Power 5-ish, although at the time it wasn't even a Power 5 league. We've got 2 years of Scott Frost being a good head coach at the Power 5-ish level. 19-7 in that 2-year run at UCF. Then he had one of the worst Big Ten, big program coaching stints you'll ever see. 16-31 at Nebraska, 10-6 in the Big Ten. I don't see how you can go any higher than C tier for Scott Frost with that, man. I really don't. I think you got to stick him there. He could rock it right up, and I have not had a very good read on UCF because I had Gus Malzahn in the A tier last year. A tier. I was a big Gus Malzahn guy. Felt really good about where things were going with KJ Jefferson and him. Swing and a miss. So I could be off here, but I've got to see more. I mean, Scott Frost was 10-26 in the Big Ten. 10-26 in the Big Ten. I don't care if he worked with Sean McVay after that. He was 10-26 in the Big Ten and had 1 year of greatness at this level. That's it. So just not enough there for me to do anything more than that. Lance Leipold had a disappointing year this year. Lance Leipold, disappointing year, missed a bowl game at 5-7. What do you do with Lance? I had him in the S tier last year. Is he dropping? Is he going to join Mike Gundy? I'm gonna keep Lance in the A tier. I'm gonna keep Lance in the A tier, or the S tier rather. I'm sorry, S tier, largely because it's hard as hell to win at Kansas, man. The guy still won 9 games there, and by the end of the year this year, I mean, he had a team that was kicking some ass. Did not make it to a bowl game because they didn't give themselves enough room for error, lost too many close games, had issues breaking in a new offensive coordinator, which was my biggest question about him last year. What happens when you hit the stage of having to replace really good coordinators? Happened with Andy Kotelnicki, did not go well. But I think because of where he's at, Kansas, the fact they rallied, he's been recruiting pretty well. They have some momentum on that front. I'm still going S tier until proven otherwise for Lance Leipold. Similar sort of story here with Kyle Whittingham. I don't think you can move him out of the S tier. Such an accomplished career. And, well, yes, you can say, John, you docked Mike Gundy for a 3-win season last year. Yeah, well, Kyle Whittingham won 5 games, and it didn't fall off the rails as much. And he has more of an excuse because of all the quarterback injuries that program has dealt with the last 2 years. I mean, a second straight year of just massive QB injury issues. I'm definitely going to cut some slack there to Kyle Whittingham and keep him in the S tier. He's just accomplished too much, guys, throughout his career for me to move him right now. If it's another year like that and we get yet another year away, I don't care what happens at quarterback. Even if Dan Pierre has some injury issues, I'll say, okay, fine. Like, something's clearly not working here. Something's clearly not clicking. This is a big year. I mean, they've got a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback. A lot of change there in a program that's been pretty steady and pretty rock solid. But I just have too much respect for the job that he's done, and it is very plainly obvious to see quarterback injuries have been such a factor. 16 bowls, 20 years, 7 double-digit win seasons, 3 New Year's Six bowls, 2 Pac-12 titles. It's an impressive resume. Willie Fritz. Sorry, Houston fans. Maybe I should have updated the picture here. Had him in the B tier last year. Not going to move him. Only 4-8 in year 1, but showed some flashes, man. They upset K-State. They put a real scare into Oklahoma, beat TCU and Utah. And, like, if you would have told me going into the year, Houston in year 1, like, Willie Fritz would beat K-State, TCU, and Utah, I'd say it's pretty good. It's a pretty good year. Pretty good year 1. No offense at all. They've got to get better. He did lose his defensive coordinator, obviously. Texas Tech money whipped him away. So that's going to be a challenge to replace there. But Fritz is a defensive guy. I think he can figure it out. I think Fritz is another one that you kind of keep in the middle for right now and say definite room for mobility one way or the other. Going to need to keep making Houston better. But I came in with a high opinion of him. I still have a high opinion of him after seeing what we saw in year 1. Scott Satterfield. What are we doing with Scott Satterfield? I had him in the D tier last year. Didn't love what we saw year 1 at Cincinnati. A little bit better this year. So we're going Scott Satterfield in the C tier. Scott Satterfield, things fell off halfway through last year, and they tanked and did not end up with the season that it looked like it could have been at one point for Cincy. But that was still better. That was still moving in the right direction. I still just don't know, like, how much upside there really is there in the long term. I am still not crazy about that as a hire. Okay, I'm still not crazy about that as a hire for Cincinnati, but I do have to be fair and say it was improved from last year. So I will bump Scott Satterfield up a little bit. I will bump him up. 2 left, and these guys played each other in the bowl game. Let's start with Coach Prime. Coach Prime last year I had in the B tier. He won 9 games this year. He had a Heisman Trophy winner. It's going to move him up, but how far? I'm going to keep him with his buddy Mike Gundy right now in the A tier. Going to do that. Take nothing away from the job he did. It was great. He has improved that program dramatically over 2 years. I just need to see more of a track record here, and especially now, what happens without Shedeur and Travis. But honestly, even more so than Travis, I worry about Shedeur and the impact that will have on the program. Because, Jackson State, he was rolling with Shedeur. Colorado, he's rolling with Shedeur, a guy who's going to be a first-round draft pick at quarterback. He brought in the talent. He gets all the credit in the world for that. He has Caden Slater coming in. He's got Julian Lewis coming in. Clearly, he can still get talent in there. But what happens when it's not the guys that you've been rocking with as you have built this whole thing up? I want to see that before I can declare really S tier here. If he can keep Colorado rolling, another 8 to 9 win season with all of that, I'll shut up and throw him up there in the S tier for sure. I think for right now, had he made the Big 12 championship game, perhaps won the Big 12 championship, definitely could have been in the S tier this year. Didn't quite get there. Love what he did for the league. Love the Heisman Trophy there. Love what he has done in the portal and on the recruiting trail. But for right now, give me another year like that. We can talk about the S tier. And finally, Kalani Sitake. He was in the B tier for me last year when I was kind of waffling like BC. Last year at this time, we were talking about Kalani Sitake's job security. Is he on the hot seat? What do you do with him now? Well, he responds with an 11-win season, goes 10-2 in the regular season, and for me, moves up to the A tier. With that. Another one of those cases where, like, great season, not elite season, winning Big 12, having the same year that Arizona State did, definitely could have moved him up into the S tier. I think move him up into the A tier. Incredible job, man. Again, I felt like I was being generous in putting him in the B tier going into this year. So you can almost say he moved up too, because I was right on the borderline of giving him C. I am not somebody that dings the accomplishments of the BYU team last year for the fact that they had some close games. But I will say this year, I'm thinking about it like, okay, how much of these close games going to come back around this year? Can you keep that up? Can you continue to win? And when I say close games, like games that you should have won by more. Oklahoma State, Utah, although Utah, I get it's a rivalry game. But can you keep that same thing rolling next year? How much of it was a product of some bounces going your way for that? I won't ding you for that in the moment at all. But I also think when you take a step back and look at, all right, what's it going to mean for next year? Like, there's a reason that Phil Steele will use those close games, how many games you win by 7 points or less, as potential indicators for teams that can go up or down, or like turnover luck, how much that can change what's going to happen to a team next year, because that can be something that really tilts your way one year and then tilts the other way another year. Even if you say that tilted BYU's way a little bit last year, it was still a very good season. Even if that were an 8-4 season, still a very good season. And definitely something that would make you feel better about Kalani Sitake. So take nothing away from them there. A tier looks pretty good, man. You're sitting right next to Mike Gundy and Coach Prime. I think that's pretty good. So that's what we got. Folks. There's your S tier, your A tier, your B tier, your C tier, and your D tier. Definitely let me know. Definitely let me know what you think.